back in action. Trying again. Are you guys back? Are you coming back? Come back. Come back. All right. I see you starting to come in. Thanks. I got it fixed, I think. Reggie, tell me if you can hear me. Reggie from Kentucky. All right. Charlie says he can hear me. John, hey, how's it going? Jill. Hey, guys, this is Jim with Crawfordology, where we sometimes talk and you hear what we're actually saying. So hopefully this is going to be one of those times. I'm trying my best. Carol from Iowa. Ladies and gentlemen, Jim Crawford says Buckshot. Hey, thanks, guys. I really appreciate you guys putting up with my one-man show for a little bit longer. We are working feverishly right now on this new studio. We've picked out, purchased a building. We're building a 4,500 square foot facility. It's going to have multiple studios. It's going to be a lot of fun. I think you guys will enjoy it. Hey, if you haven't, well, is it going to work? If you haven't already, well, apparently that button's no longer going to work. My subscribe button is gone. So I just have to say, if you haven't, please make sure you follow something that says Crawfordology and looks like that and follow us, okay? Hey, let me see if I can share. Hey, I can. American One. If you haven't been here, Louise said she can hear us all the way down in North Carolina, despite Snowmageddon. She's able to hear us. And you know, the good thing is there's fake news going on about the snow, right? I don't know about you guys, but they've been talking about 50 inches of snow. I've seen it on Facebook. We're going to get 5 feet of snow in the next 3 days. And we barely had, I don't know, there might have been 10 or 15 snowflakes that fell today. So here we are in Southeast Virginia, where we were going to have tons of snow. We had a little drizzle, little freezing rain. Much ado about nothing. Fake news, but people, fake news. Okay, so American One. Listen, if you haven't been here before, please make sure you go. Please make sure you join us. There's lots of things happen here. Lots of discussions for you to follow along with. We've got stories. We've got advertisers. We've got all sorts of folks. You can listen to us on Spotify. I think we're on Apple. I think we're on a lot of different places now. So just keep an eye out. Come back and see us and pay attention to what we're talking about, because we do talk about the things that you care about. Truly. At least I think we do. And you're here, so I suspect we do. All right. So tonight the question is, who is America? Really, who's America? Who are we? Are we the land of the free? Home of the brave? You know, what about liberty? Do we really have liberty like the founding fathers thought about liberty? And are we really a free people? So as I was thinking through this tonight, I said, let's look and see, what is the meaning of liberty? What's the meaning of liberty? And as I looked at the meaning of liberty, there are really three definitions. There's the first, which is the state or condition of people who are able to act and speak freely. So I sort of think, when I hear this, I think about Facebook. I think about the places that we have YouTube, various platforms out there, Twitter, that like to hold back and decide what you're allowed to say and decide what they believe is true, what they believe to be fake. So we have some liberty, but it's certainly measured. The second definition is the power to do or choose what you want to do. So I think about, you know, the mandates that are spread around the country, the things that those people in government have decided for you. And then there's a political right, you know, liberties like the freedom of the press, personal liberties. Hey, I'd like to go here and do this. Well, you can't. You haven't done this. Show us your passport. Show us your vaccine passport. Show us whatever's out there. But liberty is an idea that is so old and original to, well, so old and original, not just to our country. So John Adams said, "Straight is the gate and narrow is the way that leads to liberty, and few nations, if any, have found it." Now, of course, he was paraphrasing the Bible. John Adams was a devout Christian man, and Matthew 7:14 says, "Because straight is the gate and narrow is the way which leadeth unto life, and few there be that find it." So here in one quote, Adams really represents a couple of things. He talks about the importance of liberty. He talks about the need to have liberty, but he also ties in Christian value in the original thought of our founders. So where are we today on these things? Where do we go when we want to feel that there's faith? Where do we go when we believe? And I think many of us probably still think, I do, that America is a Christian nation. And while it's a Christian nation, it still allows others to see the world from their own religious point of view. So it's not mutually exclusive to say, if you're a Christian nation, you can't practice Judaism, or you can't practice, Islam. You can't have another belief that's not within that belief of the nation. But our founders, our founding documents, all have great tie back to these things, and this whole idea of belief and freedom, it's all very clear throughout the Federalist Papers, the Constitution. You can find many, many places where they talk about this, that liberty is really the main idea that drove our founders, and that liberty was found through their biblical tieback. So we've got a few things happening today, right? A lot of things, really. We've got, on the one hand, we've got a government that wants more and more to drive decisions. Yesterday, thankfully, we had two Democrat senators who sided with the Republicans to not remove the filibuster rules. The Democrats had decided that they weren't going to get the filibuster, removed. So how can they do this? What can they imagine that would allow them to get the Voting Rights Act through? And Voting Rights Act, it sounds like it's such a genuine idea, such a wholesome thing. Hey, I want to have these people as I want to give them their rights. But is it really giving them their rights when we say we're going to change the Constitution, at least the way it's formatted, right? And in doing this, we're going to move our discussion from electing officials at the state level like we've always done, and we're going to usurp the power of those states, and we're going to bring that in and say, hey, we know better than these state governments do. So Article 1 of the Constitution, it grants the powers, and it explains how we're going to do things, how we're going to vote and fill offices. It says when we're going to do it, how we're going to do it. And of course, in their greater wisdom, whenever it's to their advantage, whenever they feel like, hey, that's really good most of the time, but right now that's a bad idea because it runs counter to some of the things I want to do. I want to change this Voting Rights Act, and since I can't get that changed, I'm going to have to suspend some things that have traditionally been powers given to the states. I'm going to have to change the rules of the Senate so that we can get this thing through, because if we follow the rules that we've been following for the last 200 years, I'm not going to be able to have my way. But luckily, we had two senators with a real backbone to say, stop. That's not the right way. That's not the way we want to proceed. That's certainly not the way we want to see ourselves when we're out of power, right? They wanted to be treated fairly, and therefore they want to treat others fairly. And I really appreciate Joe Manchin right now. I've been critical of him in a lot of ways, because I think a lot of the harmful things that are going on with coal and carbon really hurts the people of West Virginia. It hurts the people of Eastern Kentucky. And when you have a senator with that kind of power representing those people, he should represent the views of those people, not the will of Washington. And I think in this case, he did that. So he definitely has a backbone. We've seen some hard fights. A lot of the Democrats right now are very angry with him. In fact, he's probably more popular with Republicans today than he was with Democrats yesterday. So where are we going to go? Who are we going to be? Are we going to be a nation that believes in some of these not just passing ideas, not just ideas of convenience, things that we pull out and we say, well, we'll use it now, but tomorrow it may not fit our narrative. It may not fit our goals. Therefore, oh, that's an old archaic rule. Let's get rid of that. I look forward to a time where our politicians are really representing the people and the will of the people, and they're not just trying to make headlines. They're not trying to do the one-upsmanship of each other. And look, both parties are very guilty of this. Very guilty of this. So we see that there are a lot of things happening right now, and from the Voting Rights Act dying, Build Back Better dying, and then I think it may be on life support. It may, there's still 3 years left, or at least another few months left as we get through this year. I suspect that one or both houses will switch to the Republicans if the Republicans drive smart campaigns and put good people in these races, and then they drive through. If they do, some of the things that they've done in the past, throw an empty-headed party hack in those roles, and then they wonder why this person doesn't get elected, that's people are tired of politicians right now. I think we see that in Virginia with Glenn Youngkin. We see that, people have really embraced the idea of a Winsome Sears, somebody who's actually lived some life and done something outside of politics, bringing common sense, bringing an idea that we're going to pursue, the well-being, the benefit of all Virginians and all Americans. I think that is critical to the survival of our country, and certainly to our country being able to stand up and again rise and maintain our position of prominence in the world economy, on the world stage as the single world superpower. We're under an assault right now like never before. And unfortunately, a lot of folks don't recognize that. China is not on our heels, folks. They are side by side, and they may be moving in front of us. And we're letting them do it with bad politics, bad policies, people who are beholden to the Chinese. We see it time and time again. The Confucian Institutes, which there are 34 of them here in the United States, and our universities that are teaching us that Confucianism is the way to go. That's the thing we should embrace. So what we really have to do is get clarity of vision as to what America is. Are we a constitutional republic as our founders outlined? Do we believe in those ideas that we founded the country upon? Recognizing that we've had our bumps and bruises along the way, that we've made bad decisions, but we've corrected those things. We've corrected those decisions. We fought civil wars. We fought for civil rights. We've done so many things. We've done so many things to help correct the errors of the past, and we continue to do that. So are we going to live in 1960 and before, or are we going to move ahead, focus ourselves on the country that we can be, and live as that constitutional republic that has that, as we've heard Bush and Reagan in various ways say, I like Bush's the shining city on the hill, or the Thousand Lights speech. So there is, we are the beacon of hope to most of the world. And if we can't get past this ourselves, who else does the rest of the world have to look up to? One of the things that really jumped out in these founding fathers points is that, hey, most of the country, most of the world rather, hasn't been able to do what we've been able to do in the United States, right? This idea that we have been able to create a liberty, a personal liberty that is unrecognizable to most of the world. It's unfathomable for most of the world. They've not seen it. They have no idea what it would look like. But here we are doing it. You know, a bunch of hill jacks who were cutting into the forest of the new world. And they're out there and they're making things happen and they're living and acting this entrepreneurial lifestyle without the aristocrats driving things, without the need for a king to say, do this, do that. So I think it is, it's unique what's happened here in the United States. Benjamin Franklin said, God grant that not only the love of liberty, but a thorough knowledge of the rights of man may pervade all the nations of the earth, so that a philosopher may set his foot anywhere on its surface and say, this is my country. So, you know, how interesting that you know, certainly Franklin's a well-traveled guy. He's the richest founding father. He's traveled all over the world. He's loved by lots of people. There's lots of stories about him in Paris. And here he is recognizing in the 1700s, actually, I think he said this in, 1789. And he recognizes in 1789 that there is this special thing happening in the United States. And boy, you know, this idea of liberty, the idea of the rights of man, you know, these were books written by some of the big thinkers. And Hume, Burke, these were people who were giving up ideas and explaining to the world a different way to frame our thought. No longer do we have to think about a king or somebody sitting high on a hill, somebody sitting in a position of power to tell us what to do, but that we were free to do these things. And now here we are, 2022, and we're faced with a return to the aristocracy. There's a ruling class, there's a group of academics, there's a group of people who believe that we are not smart enough to think and act for ourselves. They believe that they have the right answer and that only they can fix what's wrong in our lives. But if you look deeply, they can't even manage their own lives. So how can we cede our power? How do we set back in a moment like COVID or a moment of economic turmoil or of military concern and say, these people have the answer. I'll do whatever they say. George Washington said, the establishment of civil and religious liberty was the motive which induced me to the field. This is the reason I took up arms. That's what he's saying. The object is attained. I've done it. We've done it. We actually have civil and religious liberty. And now it remains my earnest wish and prayer that the people of the United States could make a wise and virtuous use of the blessings placed before them. So think about this. The sacrifice made by our founding fathers is so tremendous. It's so new an idea, so hard fought and won. And yet we find ourselves, our countrymen, and our countrymen actually includes the female. So we find these folks consumed by this idea and tricked by the smooth-talking, silver-tongued people in Washington who with smoke and mirrors and a little magic make up the reason that you should follow their way and remove your own rational decision-making from the process. You don't have the skills to do this, they say. We better think for you. But look at what they're doing to the country. Look at what they're doing to the world. And just ask yourself, are these men really, men and women, are they sacrificing for us or are they taking from us? Do they go to Washington, D.C. and come back with less because they were giving? Or do they go to Washington, D.C. and come back with more because they were taking? Today we hear Speaker Pelosi says, finally, hey, maybe we should actually think about some more stock trading restrictions. Story in the Daily Wire today by Ben Zeisloft. Pelosi has great confidence in fellow lawmakers, but is now open to more stock trading restrictions. So why and how could Nancy Pelosi come to the Congress? And when she came, a congresswoman was making probably $125,000 a year. And now she has an incredible net worth. Is Nancy Pelosi the smartest investor of all times? Has she taken advantage of opportunities that would likely put any one of us in jail had we done something similar corporately? It seems to me that our politicians should not be held to a lesser. So the Constitution provides, by the way, that you can't prosecute politicians while they're in office, not for anything short of treason or a felony. So, the misdemeanors, the things that they might jaywalk, they might do something, you're not going to put them in jail for a speeding ticket. That makes sense. But shouldn't we also hold our leaders to a higher standard? Shouldn't they be held to a higher standard than business people? Yet the people of America look with higher esteem upon business leaders than we do our political leaders. I want to share with you the Real Clear Politics poll. And let's see, this is, yesterday. So this is the average for yesterday, 12/27/119. By the way, yesterday was mine and Cynthia's 31st wedding anniversary. So I said to her on Facebook, and they said we wouldn't make it. Look, we've really proved them wrong. And I hope I can actually share a picture that I think would be kind of a cool thing to see. So here we are, Joe Biden's approval rating, and look at these numbers. Now, interestingly, I want you to look at something. So normally, when we look at a poll, there is something that makes up 100%. In these polls, interestingly, we're not even at 90% here in the IBD. USA Today is at 94%, 89%, 95, 96, 96. So it's kind of interesting to me that here with the 39 and 59 and 53.9, let's see, where's 53.9 disapproval and 40.9, there's a missing 5.2%. By the way, how many people know what that looks like? How are there people you either approve or disapprove, or they're just that other 5.2%, they just don't care? Is that what it is? Like, I don't know and I don't care. Not into that. I don't care about politics. But I want to show you this. I want you to see back on the point of how we view our esteemed leaders. By the way, if you haven't already done that, please like and share this post. Get it out there. We always deal with those sorts of things. So it helps me when you share it. Host a little watch party if you want. But look at these numbers here. Favorable ratings, U.S. political leaders. Unfavorable. Joe Biden, 53.1. Kamala, 53.7. Kamala. Donald Trump, 52.1. Nancy Pelosi, 58.6. 42.8. Kevin McCarthy, Republican. Okay, so Kevin McCarthy has the best unfavorable, but then he's got a 23% favorable? Is that just the people in his district? No, he's a Republican, right? Chuck Schumer, 45.8 and 30.6. Mitch McConnell, 58% unfavorable. He's the most unliked person in Congress. In politics, it looks like right now. So my question to you is, how is it that our business leaders have such a high, we look at people like Jamie Dimon, we look at people like Elon Musk, and we hold them in high regard. And when I say we, I'm talking collectively as American people. We look at those folks and we say, wow, those folks have done something. Yet we have our country run by people who we hold in such low esteem. All of these, every single one, had at least 10 points, including Donald Trump, by the way. At least a 10-point spread. So how do we drive ourselves? How do we define ourselves as Americans who love liberty, who love freedom, and do this in a way that actually demonstrates the American spirit, right? That gets back to those founders who had such great love for the idea. But a constitution of government once changed from freedom can never be restored. Liberty once lost is lost forever, said John Adams. It's so true. It's so true. You don't get to go back, not without blood and sacrifice. Not without blood and sacrifice. That's what they really fought for. That's what they fought for. They fought for this idea that we have to fight. Once we have it, we've all heard the Patrick Henry. We've all heard the Patrick Henry speech. You know, is life so dear or peaceful, so sweet as to be purchased at the price of chains and slavery? Forbid it. Almighty God, I know not what courses others may take, but as for me, give me liberty or give me death. I mean, these were guys willing to put everything on the line for this. And we hastily go and we watch Netflix, we watch the NBA, we watch the NFL, we ignore what's going on. We ignore what's going on in the world, and we cede our liberty and our control to this political ruling class that really doesn't seem to care about us, but only cares about the power that they take from us. You know, they are nestled at the breast of the American people, and their food, their energy, their life, their power comes from taking, not from giving. So I don't know. I don't know. When I think about this, I get so concerned that we have allowed these same politicians who took and created administrative laws and pulled that ability from you. You know, tell me, when was the last time you got to vote on an OSHA rule, right? So the Constitution talks about, you having representation in all these areas, but then administrative law comes about. And through this administrative law, we have things like OSHA, the FDA. By the way, you know, the FDA will also tell you that you can't drink whole milk because they know better than you know. They have all sorts of little rules that they follow. I once bought a stockyard, and I used to own the stockyard in Smithfield, Virginia. And Smithfield, Virginia, if you've ever had Smithfield ham, that's the ham capital of the world. And up until a few years ago, it was owned by the Luter family. At least that was the president, CEO, or the CEO. And 3 or 4 generations of the family ran the business. They sold it to China. And as they sold it to China, we had a tremendous shift in the way the place worked. But that's kind of, I digress a little bit. So I owned the stockyard, and I closed the stockyard and had probably had it closed for a year. Yet the FDA continued to come by the stockyard and park in our parking lot on the day that had previously been the sale day. Now, I didn't think that was odd the first time that I pulled in, and I kept some horses there, and I went in to feed the horses, and there was the FDA guy, and I said, "Hey, what are you doing here?" And he said, "Well, I'm here for the sale." And I said, you can see we tore the sale barn down, right? "Yeah, I see that. I see that. Yeah, we're not doing sales here anymore, right?" Yeah, I heard that. But my boss told me to still come out here. And he did that for a year. For a year. He would drive out to the non-sale at Smithfield Livestock Yard, which no longer had scales or barns for people to run cattle through. It had gates locked around the place. And someone in the FDA deemed that that was appropriate, right? That was the best use, the highest and best use of our taxpayer dollars, was to make sure that we had people making certain that if any meat went across the scales that didn't exist, that there would be an FDA inspector there to watch. So it's these administrative rules that really start to burden us and hold us back. And it sort of insulates our leaders too. Because if there's something really hard to do, it's very easy. It's very easy for those people in power, our political leaders, to say, well, that was one of those administrative rulings, and it wasn't something we passed in Congress, but we do have oversight. I'll check into it. So you can make those administrative people the bad guy. You don't have to rule. You don't have to make the hard decisions in Congress. You cede that power to some administrative bureaucrat who may or may not be an expert in the field, more times not an expert now than a political appointee or someone who met a particular quota and was able to get the job. So the question that I have to ask us, is this really freedom? Is this really what drives us as a country? And is it a competitive model in 2022? Are we able to live and compete in a world like this when our competitors have no rules that are similar? There's no OSHA in China. There's not an FDA guy who's stopping China from shipping food to the United States. You may remember a few years back, they shipped a lot of Similac and formula, and they discovered that there'd been some contamination in the mill where the formula was made, and there was wood parts that were in the formula. In fact, the majority of the formula was made up of a material used to make a particle board-like substance. I think melamine was what it was, if I'm not mistaken. So while we put those handcuffs on American industry, and frankly, I don't think that American industry or any industry, this is the whole idea of capitalism, is it's not that the government picks winners and losers, it's that the market picks winners and losers. The market chooses. So when the market says, hey, I don't like that Similac, it's got junk in it, right? We have to identify that there's junk in it. We have to say this is unsafe. But we have a way to do that, and we have a way to manage and to produce a fair competition, a fair market that's kind of clear and transparent. And the only way to do that is for us to be playing on a level playing field with China, with Russia, with India, with Mexico, with Canada, with any place that we're doing business with and competing with. The American people should not set rules against oil producers in the U.S. and then ask Russia to make more oil, or OPEC to make more oil. You guys need to get a little busy over there. We need some oil. That's the craziest thing I've ever heard. And then we tout that. We tout that in our leadership as if they've done something really great for the planet. So I could probably talk about this all night long, because it's one of those things that just makes me a little bit crazy. So a couple of things that are going on that I want to touch on tonight, and these are quickies. Supreme Court of the United States has decided that, hey, the abortion providers in Texas who want to stay as their case is going, through the Supreme Court, they said, no, we're not going to do it. We're rejecting sending this back down to a lower court. We're going to keep it right here. We're going to hear it here. And we're going to make a determination on the right to life and what states can and can't do. Again, it's the idea of the state. Do these states have the power? Do these states have the power to manage themselves? Are their constituents able to vote laws in that allow them to live in a way that they deem appropriate? Or are they forced to live in a way that is controlled by California, New York? Big questions. And of course, the last thing I'm going to give you, and I think it's a silver lining for us, I really do. I think we've got to continue, and if you're not doing it, and I don't care if you're a Democrat or Republican, get active with your political party, get active with your ideas, let your party know. It's one thing to say that I'm a Republican or I'm a Democrat, and to say that I'm still an America First guy, right? I can be a Democrat and have some differences of opinion on certain issues And I can be a Republican and have some differences of opinion on certain issues, but still be strongly American and still care about the Constitution and still care about the idea that we are a special nation and that we've been recognized and if not ordained by God, we have certainly been blessed by God and given an opportunity here that no other place in the world has or has had. And if we do that, and if we go back to our political leaders and we reach out our hands and we identify those folks who are usurpers, those folks who are just there to take, those folks who are just there to steal, and that's what they're doing. Call it what you like, but it's stealing, right? If you get into power and you're there for number one, I'm there for me. I'm not there for my constituents. I'm here to take. Then we've got to call those folks out. We've got to vote them out of office, and we've got to shame them publicly so that there's no way that there is a politician who thinks of running again and pushing like that. All right, so I see we've got, so there's a couple of places that we broadcast. And interestingly, we do this kind of fun, and every now and then, and I love it when it happens, we will get some people who are over on Twitch. And I see tonight we got Twitch. We got the folks here from Twitch and Kylie in the CV. I hope I got that right. And listener says, I'm with you. Your body, your choice. We can all agree no vax and pro-abortion are the freedoms afforded by this country. So I'm smiling because I think we could probably argue that, right? There's lots of different ways that we could talk through this and say what's right, what's wrong. I might say that your freedom when it comes to abortion happens a little bit before that, right? It's not after you're pregnant. It's a little bit before. But I know these are really sensitive topics. I appreciate that you're tuned in and you're paying attention, and thanks for that. And we don't have to see eye to eye on things 100%. So I haven't done this for a while, so I want to go back and let me see if I can swing this around here so I can actually look at the comments and talk with you guys for a little bit. So a lot of you guys, Regina Gardner says, happy anniversary. Wade Salt, happy anniversary. Dolores Lane, happy anniversary. Hey, thanks so much. I'll tell you, Cynthia actually had some dental work yesterday. So we have decided that because the snowstorm or Snowmageddon, otherwise known as fake news, was coming, that we were going to postpone our anniversary until Friday. So we're celebrating our anniversary on Friday, and I will make sure to share it with you. Or with her, not with you guys, but I'm going to share it with her, and I'm going to tell her you guys were thinking about her. She's actually, taken those last couple of meds to get the pain from having a very painful oral surgery done. That I think for a day or two. Jill Gross says, other than voting intelligently, what can the average voter do? So Jill, I think there's a lot of things we can do, and one is just being open and honest and willing to have a conversation and willing to have people disagree with us. One of the most difficult things for a lot of people to do is to have a discussion and take an opposing viewpoint, to be a contrarian. Yeah, I don't think like that, right? And I think it's so important for us to do. If you're someplace, and many of us have been there, you're someplace and you hear people getting into that groupthink, and they start talking about this or they start talking about that, and you have a different point of view. There are nice ways to take that different point of view. And sometimes it's just as simple as saying, that's kind of an interesting way, but I kind of see it like this. And there's probably at least half the people, if we were just looking at the last election, at least half the people in that room are likely, unless you're teaching in California, from Rio Linda, as Rush used to say, right? That if you are in normal parts of America, if you are not in some New York society page 6 party, chances are that half the people there have your opinion. And don't be afraid to say it, because when you do that, you embolden people who are on the fence or people who are not as confident, and you help them to understand that, hey, there's really a different point of view. And I respect Jill, and Jill sees this differently too. So I think that that's a clear way that you can make a difference just every day. Another thing you can do, Jill, is you can participate, right? You can get out the votes, you can work with the parties, you can, even if you spend a few hours in an election cycle, to phone people, to learn about the issues so that you're prepared when somebody says, what about that? Or what about this? Look, we all know, and we've all seen it, that there are people in the news who make their living off sensationalism. They look for the smallest infraction to discount a politician or a candidate and say, oh, he's not qualified because he did this, right? He's not qualified because he's not perfect. And being ready with an answer to that, is always helpful. And sometimes it may just be the thing that tilts a couple of people who are there to go, yeah, that's true. None of us are perfect. And why are they really picking on her issue with this and his issue with that? We should look at the candidates in a holistic way and identify, who really represents our values. Shelley Niels, let's see. So she's replying to Dale, blah, blah, blah. They need to put this on the ballot and let us vote for term limits. I've talked about term limits before. And okay, I see it. Dale says term limits would help with the DC problem. I'm not sure it would, Dale, and I'll tell you why. There is another idea, these administrative lawyers, and you can watch it happen in places. If you take out elected officials, that leaves the bureaucrats with more power. So you even have more power. It already happens. Think about your own state. Think about your DMV. Think about your services that come from the state or things that you have to interact with. They can be very difficult if you're trying to navigate those without having, some representative to help you. Imagine how out of whack they could get if they knew all they had to do was wait for 4 years. Yeah, we got this senator who's really honest, but he's only got 4 years. Once he's out, we won't have this problem. Virginia does something like this already. We have a term limit for our governor. Governor in Virginia only serves 1 term. Now they can come back, skip a term, and run again. So they can run for many terms, but they can only serve 1 term, and then they have to leave office before coming back. So, are we stronger for that? I don't know. I don't think so. I think what that probably does is makes our governor a little bit weaker than, say, some of the Senate and those folks who have more time concurrently or back to back in Virginia politics. Dana Moats says, I don't waste time on the NBA or NFL. They have absolutely no respect for our flag or our anthem, just our money. And Dana, I'll tell you, I get frustrated. When I see folks who have been given so many opportunities and ask so little of, and they disrespect the country. But I want to tell you, that's not everybody in the NBA or everybody in the NFL. There are veterans in both organizations. There are, I just saw, and I wish I knew his name. Maybe somebody knows it. Maybe you guys saw it back a ways back. There was a guy who became a U.S. citizen. He was an NBA player. And he really spoke out to that. He really said, hey, I am really happy of becoming a U.S. citizen. And this was while LeBron is out there saying all the bad things. I hate the U.S. I hate this. I hate that. So, whatever. I don't want to put words in his mouth, but, kind of down on the U.S. for sure. Dale says Michigan's paid out $1.7 billion in fraudulent unemployment claims in the last year and a half. Yeah, and Dale, this is a big discussion economically, because when our leaders make decisions like this, they have impact that resonate for years to come. So we're looking right now at near 7% inflation. We have 2 quarter-point increases in the Federal Reserve borrowing rate anticipated for this year. Let me just say, I don't know. Inflation can be very difficult to get control of. you typically would have you would reduce taxes. You know, Reagan reduced taxes. He saw that more of this cash was coming out. He encouraged businesses to get out and make things, right? Inflation's the idea that we have too few goods being chased by too much money. So the government's paid checks to everyone. Everybody stayed home. Stuff didn't get made. So now we're competing for products. So it's just simple supply and demand. So the price goes up because now that's the commodity and it's valuable. But when you get people back to work, that can have a way of going back to normal quickly. If we don't keep that in check, we can go into a state of hyperinflation. And you saw this in Germany in pre-World War II. You saw this in Brazil in the 90s, where suddenly people were taking wheelbarrows full of cash to buy a loaf of bread. And, you know, there's some famous stories about Albert Einstein actually being paid as a professor and his wife coming to get his paycheck in the middle of the day, happening sometimes on people were getting paid twice a day so that they could take enough cash to go get their daily necessities. And that's usually on the front end of a currency collapse. So let's see. I see Janet Moss says, instead of killing the baby, give it up for adoption. A lot of people don't have the option to have babies. You know, while that's true, Janet, I will say these are intense decisions for families, and they tie a lot of personal things. And while I agree with you personally, I would follow this approach. I can understand that there are other factors that sometimes make it very difficult for people. I'm hugely pro-life. I just want to be careful that when I think about this with other folks, that I'm not judging them. That's in my book, that's God's job, and I want to give that I want to give them the benefit of the doubt. Judy says, can I come along on your anniversary party Friday? I love you and Cynthia. Judy, we love you too, but there are certain things in the Crawford household that we hold sacrosanct, and our anniversary days, you know, it's always been like this. So we would keep the kids, get a sitter for the kids, and we'd go out and have some alone time to just connect and enjoy each other. I'm hoping she feels like that. I'm hoping she really feels like that. So Wade says I should teach a class on debating. Most, including myself, stink at it. You know, Wade, I believe me, I have nothing to teach, but I will say I think it's something that we don't try enough to think about. How can we take the opposing view and still do it with a smile and still be friends at the end of the day? Here in Richlands, Dana Moat says, here in Richlands, self-centered ignorance has trickled all the way from D.C. to our town council. You try to discuss the particular, and it's as if, and it's F this and F that. Sad. Yeah, I get it. I get it. Yeah, and you know, politics, honestly, is one of those areas that, hey, Debbie from Corpus Christi. Wow. Debbie Davis home. So, you know, there are a lot of things that happen, I think, in politics, and particularly politics is one of those things, man, that just has a way. When I was a kid, we would go to the dinner table at my grandmother's house, and, you know, a lot of yelling and hollering. So you just kind of got used to that, and everybody knew we always loved each other, and we were all going to be very demonstrative and talking about the things that we felt. So it happens. It happens. Dana, I'm sorry that we don't have a better way to do that. Shelly's calling out her mom, but you know, I know Shelly loves her mom because every time we come on, they communicate. Charlie says, sir, do you see us going into a three-front war, at least heat up before November, October surprise, Ukraine, China, Iran, a new way to distract us? So look, I'm going to tell you that my belief is that absolutely anything that happens in the world is happening because China is trying to distract us. And it gets very easy for us sometimes to focus on these things as opposed to focus on the economic, the political, and just the influence war with China. There is a competition, and there are lots of ways to look at this. I want to be careful because I don't want it to come off as if I have lots of Chinese friends. I don't want it to sound as if I hate Chinese people. I don't. I love all people. But we have a competing idea. the idea that we have with a republic and capitalism is very different than a socialist communist system. So Haney, oh, sorry, thanks Debbie Davis, Haney, thank you for that. It's very different, right? It's very different from that system. So when we see Iraq, Afghanistan, I have a feeling was a distraction from the real war. And at some point, we're going to get into a discussion on this show about how we need to look at some of the actions China's taken. The Belt Road, South China Seas, their approach to Taiwan, their approach to Hong Kong, and many of the other areas, and just kind of China's traditional view on the way the world should be. You can look in Asian history, you'll see that China has always felt that they are the super power of Asia, the prime people, the people who should lead. And when they're not leading, they're preparing to lead. So we've got to look at this objectively. So Robert says, how come they're not talking about balanced budgets? You know, Robert, I think just normal kind of common sense has left us, because we talk now about when there's a surplus in government, we talk about raising the cost of government. Oh, we're going to give those people raises. We're going to give them bonuses. We're going to do all these great things that really we should be questioning. Hey, if you don't need that money to operate, you need to return that to the people you took it from, the taxpayers. Instead, we go into these deficit spending situations where we just go and say, I will just borrow some more. We'll just get some more money. Print a little more. That's the problem with fiat currency, is we have ways to do that. And you're going to hear some of the geniuses of Washington, D.C., like AOC, who say, yeah, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. You never have to pay it back. And, you know, you can just keep printing it. Yeah, I don't think that that's accurate. So we should be talking about balanced budgets. Do I think they'll remove Biden? No, I don't. But I you know, look, were you ever in gym class in school and you got picked by the team you really didn't want to be on, right? Like the bad team, it's, oh man, this team is definitely a terrible team, but I'm on it. And that's a little bit the way I feel some days. Hey, it may not be the team I want to be on. It may not be the team captain I want right now. I do want to be on this team. It may not be the team captain and the leadership that I was looking for or had hoped for, but we've got to make the best of it as Americans and say we've got to find a way past the partisan politics. I hope that they don't remove Biden. Kamala would be worse. I hope that what we do is we end up voting Biden out of office in 2 years, and we recognize that every step he's taken has been adverse to the United States, either through neglect or through ignorance, and that we should be doing something about that, finding candidates that are better for us. Tammy Riley says, what's happening in Ukraine feels like we've been led there, but by whom and for what? So, you know, Ukraine has been since way back in the times of the czars, the heart's desire of the Russian czar, right? They want that warm water port. They want to be able to get down there and run the Black Sea and the show. And the idea, you know, the whole charge of the Light Brigade happens down at the Crimean War, and the idea was that the Tsar said, "Hey, you guys are mistreating the Muslim population there. You're mistreating my Christian Russians. Therefore, I'm coming in to fix it." And it was the Brits and the French who came in and said, "Hey, we can't have the Russian Tsar expanding his power. We've got to go push them back, and we're going to get to a spot where we can kind of manage." Shelley's offered to be our chauffeur tomorrow. Thank you, Shelley. That's very sweet. So when you see things happening in Crimea, there's a long history of it, for one, and there's a lot of Russians that still live in Crimea, in Ukraine. You know, from the old Soviet Union days, I've got some Ukrainian friends, and they all speak English, or I'm sorry, they all speak Russian as well as those local dialects. So there's a deep desire, and a lot of Russians have a very macho maybe approach is kind of the way to it. Hey, we're not going to be kicked around, pushed around, whatever. And I think there's a strategic reason. Putin, of course, looks at the world, you know, as a chessboard, and I think he sees that this is an opportunity that he can technically go in and take the rest of Ukraine and not have to worry about repercussions from the United States or anybody else in the world. There's no strong man out there that's going to go push this thing through. And I have a hard time believing that there's somebody in Europe ready to intervene. This is why they've kept Ukraine probably out of NATO so that they don't have to do that. Also, you know, there's some pushing that comes from our side, from the Allies' side, and this is where diplomacy really needs to be handled carefully. If we were Russia, you know, imagine if our enemies started to say, "Hey, China says we're going to put a base in Mexico City, and we're going to put 250,000 troops in Mexico City," we'd probably say, "No, you're not. You know, we're not for that." And there would be some battles. Now, another thing that can happen with China is there's always proxy wars. So China says, "Hey, you've seen the situation where, you know, two kids on the schoolyard, and there's people in the background going, 'Yeah, hit him, hit him, hit him,' and they want to see what happens." And there's definitely an advantage for some governments to stay out of that fight. Make your favorite tough guy get in a fight, so he has to use at least some of his strength and some of his, you know, in our case, ammunition, supplies, capital to fight this battle. And while doing that, we get to sit back and see how well he fights. And then if we're really good friends with the guy he's fighting with, we can say, "Here, hit him with this. Let's see how that works on him." So if you take that to a Chinese discussion, you know, the Chinese can provide armaments, different weaponry, different TTPs, and it puts them in a spot that they can try it out against allies, see how it works, come back and work on it, and continue to hone their own stuff. So it's just a sad reality. That's the statesmanship, the gamesmanship that happens in a lot of wars and proxy type wars. So, hey, folks, listen, thank you so much for being with us tonight. And thanks for working past our technical difficulties. You know, we have all sorts of problems. We will not have as many problems once we get back to the studios. New format, whole bunch of changes coming. I think it's less than 90 days. I'm counting on it being less than 90 days. So thank you all for joining with us tonight. And I will look forward to seeing you all soon and next time. Take care.